Hello everyone, this is Julia. Can you imagine that pretty much nobody can ever be objective? That's because the brain is playing some tricks on us. And if you watch this video till the end, you'll find out how they work and what they are and whether you can do anything about them. So today's topic is cognitive biases. I will talk about top 11 most common ones and how they influence the way we think. Let's start with some theory, shall we? Bias in general is a disproportional weight that we put to a thing or a person, and therefore being biased is being unfair. Cognitive bias relates to thinking. Thinking takes a lot of energy, and our brains try to simplify that thinking to make sense of what's happening. So cognitive bias is the systematic error that happens during or as a result of this simplification. In other words, the shortcuts that we use to simplify our lives often lead to incorrect assumptions, reactions, and judgments. It is really hard to avoid biases. Even when you know how that works, your brain falls into that trap over and over again. Amos, Tversky, and Daniel Kahneman, two researchers who introduced the term cognitive bias, in their 1974 paper, Judgment Under Uncertainty, Heuristics and Biases, claim that cognitive biases may allow for the speedier choices in cases where speed is more valuable than precision. By the way, I highly recommend their book Thinking Fast and Slow, where they explain two systems that drive our thinking. System 1, which is fast and intuitive, and System 2, which is more slow and logical. Okay, cognitive biases are a drag and we can't escape them. So why even bother making video about that? As someone who always strives to be fair and make right decisions, I find it really fascinating that I literally can't. Another point is knowing that these things exist would make me a more mindful person when it comes to my own decisions and when it comes to decisions of other people. Like they say, forewarned is forearmed. And the third reason is maybe a little bit sneaky, but knowing how thinking works can help you actually use the biases to your advantage. When it comes to convincing people or making your point at a presentation or doing some stakeholder management at work. Before I jump into top 11 common biases, I would like to show you the scale of the problem. This infographic nicely shows how many things can trick our brain. This picture represents 188 cognitive biases that are listed on Wikipedia. If we look at four major categories: too much information, not enough meaning, we need to act fast, what should we remember? It's quite fair to say that all of that requires a lot of thinking, and it's very tempting to go the familiar road and cut some corners and not trying to analyze the world over and over again. I'll put a link to this high-resolution visualization in the description. Now let's move on to some specific biases. As you have seen, there's plenty of biases, so I was very biased about the biases and I picked my favorites. Number 1, confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when you try to confirm your existing beliefs and opinions when trying to process some new information. Let's say you believe that the Earth is flat. You're probably following the people who believe the same thing. Your social media feed supports your opinion. Basically, you live in a bubble. Even Facebook starts suggesting you the things about flat Earth. This is how you really don't see the other side of things. Of course, you can insert any other topic instead of the flat Earth, be it politics, vaccination, feminism, or some lifestyle choices. This happens because of two reasons. One, obviously trying to save energy while making decisions, and B, trying to protect our self-esteem by confirming that our beliefs are accurate. Number 2, fundamental attribution error. That means attributing other people's behavior to their personality and our own behavior to the external factors. Let me give you an example to make it more clear. You think that when a person is late to a meeting, that's because they are disorganized or lazy or cannot plan their time correctly, and not consider some external factors like traffic jam or some personal emergency. As opposed to yourself, when you are late to the meeting, You say that, oh, there was some traffic or bad weather, and you also expect others to see it like that. Again, it happens because we try to protect our self-esteem and divert the blame for some negative outcomes. Number 3, survivorship bias. This is the bias that I briefly covered in the video about limiting beliefs. So survivorship bias is the phenomenon when we only see the people, or say the companies when it comes to business, who made it, people who became successful. And we do not take into account all the people and all the companies, all the projects that failed. Well, this happens because of the visibility. We literally just don't see people who didn't make it. And the dangerous thing here is that the people who have made it start telling everyone, if I could do it, you could do it. In many cases, this is true because the key ingredient to success is hard work. However, a lot of people were working as hard, but they still didn't make it. Unfortunately, people who talk about their success and how everybody can achieve that tend to forget other factors such as timing, luck, connections, background, certain privileges that other people may not possess. Anchoring. Anchoring is when we rely on the first available piece of information, and that piece of information influences our further decision making. So to make it more clear, say you're buying a piece of furniture and the first price you see is $1,000 and you think like, oh, that's a lot. So the next time when you see $500 for the similar or the same piece of furniture, you think like, oh, that's actually a really good deal. So the anchor in the situation was this $1,000. That was your starting point. This tricks us into making the decisions that may not even be good for us. If the first price that you have seen was $600, probably $500 would not look like a really good deal to you. Some people use this bias in negotiations. Say, if you're negotiating a price or, for instance, a salary, you can start with a ridiculously high number, and therefore something below that would already sound very reasonable for another party. Number 5, sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy is about continuing certain behavior because a lot of resources are already invested, even though continue doing that will make you unhappy or worse off. The classic example of that is long-term relationship that don't work anymore, but because there's so much time and energy and emotions invested in those relationships that it's just so hard to break up with another person. Another more business example is to pour more money and resources into the project, which already is kind of failing. This happens to correct the disconnect between the outcome and the effort. People trying to convince themselves that if they just try a bit more harder, put a bit more money, spend a bit more time, things will be fixed. Well, the truth is, if that's not going well, you really cannot get the money, time, or effort back. All it does is make you feel worse. Number 6, the hindsight bias. You know, these people who tell you, I told you so, I knew that. So it's exactly about that. When people see the events that happened in the past as more predictable than they actually are. So this can be applied to the election results or the game outcome or some economic crisis. There would always be someone who would say, oh, I knew that all along. So there are 3 reasons why it works like that. First one is cognitive. We might distort the predictions we had before the event. The second one is metacognitive. Because we know all the details about that event, we see it as much easier foreseeable. And the third one is motivational. It's very comforting to think of this world as safe and predictable. Number 7, the availability bias. It's the tendency to use the information that comes to mind quickly to make decisions. That means that the most vivid memories would overweigh when it comes to the decision making. And unfortunately, less vivid but more important facts will not come to your mind as quickly. The good example of this is traveling by plane. People tend to vividly imagine all the news items that they have seen about the plane crashes, even though flying is one of the safest ways to travel. This happens, of course, as a shortcut to the decision making, and some vivid memory of something can help us make the decision faster than some logical analysis or fact-checking. Next one. Number 8, bandwagon effect. You know, when everybody does something and you do just because everybody does it? That's a tendency to adopt a certain behavior, attitude, or style just because many people are doing that. That is essentially a groupthink. For example, there is this new fad diet and a lot of people are trying that, so it's very tempting to follow that and also do it. The bandwagon effect happens because we want to be accepted by the group of our peers. Even though right now you don't need to be a part of a tribe to survive. Your brain hasn't really caught up on that yet. Number 9, just world hypotheses. It's the idea that whatever happens to a person is because they deserved it, whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. Well, that essentially means that all the good things will unavoidably be rewarded and all the bad things punished. Unfortunately, the most common example of that is victim blaming. In some criminal cases like rape or assault, people tend to blame the victim for whatever happened to her. They thought that she has done something wrong, otherwise that wouldn't have happened to her. In reality, she was not the one committing a crime. Why do people think like that? People want to be optimistic about the world. They would like to control their fear, and they really don't want to face the vulnerability. So they prefer to think that if they do everything right, nothing wrong is going to happen to them. Number 10, and I like this one. It's Dunning-Kruger Effect. This is the effect when people think that they're smarter and more capable than they actually are. Such people don't have enough skills to recognize that they are incompetent. This is very ironic, isn't it? For example, people in the beginning of their careers might think that they are exceptionally competent, but this effect actually goes away with more experience. So the more they know, the more they realize how much more they still get to know. Dunning-Kruger effect is not about stupidity though. Highly competent people might think that they're as competent in another area. Their judgment is clouded by the existing expertise in doing something else. This happens because it's very hard to see ourselves from the outside. Sometimes little information really seems like it's all there is to know about the subject. And of course, it helps us to make sense of some information and make decisions quickly. And the last one, number 11, is the IKEA effect. IKEA effect refers to putting disproportional value into something that we have assembled or have done ourselves, even though the quality may not be that good. This is the extension of the effort justification. When the more effort you put into something, the more you like it. Yeah, that happens because people want to feel competent. And actually by assembling something, they would see the result of their competence. Biases are a drag, but can we do something about them? It's probably impossible to fully eliminate that. You can still do something to mitigate the damage. So first of all, it's important to be aware. When you know, and now you know, that these things exist and how they work and why they trick your brain, you will be more mindful about your own behavior and behavior of others. Maybe once in a while you will stop and think, am I biased by something? Try to challenge your thinking. You can even make it into an experiment. Challenge your own beliefs. Especially when you receive new information, try to start this debiasing process. And the third way to reduce bias, which relates to the first two, is try to find different perspectives. Talk to people who don't share the same views as you do. Try to look for things that contradict your opinion. Just deliberately Google. But of course, while doing that, please check your sources. They should be credible though. So that was it. That were my 11 most common cognitive biases. Did you recognize any of that in yourself? What is your favorite bias? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more useful videos. Have a great day. Bye.